To all my collectors out there, it's time to get organizing and cleaning, for in this Roll for Crit review, we're going to take a look at My Shelfie. The game My Shelfie, not my actual shelves. Behold our lovely board here of little tokens for us to use to stack onto our shelf. This is going to be about scoring by placing your tiles either together in groups or in specific patterns in order to get the most victory points. Now, on your turn, you can take 1 to 3 tiles from this board, putting them into your shelf, like so. So let's just say we take these 2. They can be put in any order, but they have to go in the same column. So no putting 1 in here and 1 in there. So you're going to drop 1 like that, and then the other on top. Obviously, if this column is full, you can't place anything more in there. No overflow. However, there is a restriction to taking tiles from the board. You can take up to 3, as I said before. However, before you take them, at least one side of each tile has to be open, not touching another tile. So right now, these 3 tiles can be taken as a pick, but these 3 cannot, as these 2 tiles do not have a side that is open yet. The other restriction is it has to be in a straight line. So I cannot do a zigzag here, or this tile, and this tile. They have to all be touching. So once again, these 3 available. I cannot do this weird L shape or just take 3 random ones from throughout the board. Now, there are 3 ways for you to score points in here. First one, and probably the easiest one, is grouping. As you take tiles and place them into your little shelf, you're going to want to make sure you keep tiles of the same category together. And based on the size of the group, you're going to gain a number of points. The next way to get points is through the public goals. Those be 2 put out at the start of the game. They are random. And the first person to complete them is going to take the top tile. So let's say you were able to do that, you would get 6 points. Someone else can complete it. However, they'll take the lower one, which will score them less points. The final way for you to get points is that card over there. That is a personal goal. No one else will see it but you. Why it's in the standee. It's asking you to get 1 of each type in a specific slot. So for example, I probably should have looked at it. This wants a book here. So I failed to get that point. But if the book was there and I was able to get them in all the other spots, at the bottom, there's a little chart. For every tile that you match correctly with your secret goal, you're going to get more points. If the center ever drops to less than 4 tiles, you're going to put them all back in this bag, refilling it, not covering up the spaces for the 3 or 4 player counts. First one to fill up their shelf is going to get this extra little point, and then the round will end after everyone's taken the same number of turns. Once someone has filled up the shelf and everyone has an equal number of turns, count up your points and see who has the best shelfie. Obviously, I feel like this game was designed with board gamers in mind because yes, you can collect many different tiles besides board game tiles, which by the way have real board games on them. Take a look and try to guess them. There are cats, plants, photos, strange metal statue things that I've never seen before. But odds are, for those of you who have either yourself or someone you know who have a sizable game collection, there's a very high chance that you or they have purchased a board game shelf that looks just like this in some other color, probably black, and probably from IKEA. That isn't to say that you have to be in the know for board games. This isn't like Millennium Blades, which I really do like and is a parodying on the collecting and amassing of trading card games. You don't need to be an avid board game fan. This is an easy game that could just hit the table with regardless of whether you're new to board games or if you have a shelf this big already filled exclusively with board games. I'm going to keep picking this thing up because it's a fun little toy because that's part of the appeal of the game. This isn't simply just grabbing your tiles and putting them together, though I guess that would be a bit more like in the digital version. I haven't tried it digitally, but you're using just mouse and key. This has its own little vertical toy thing here that really does add to it. Yes, it's a little bit gimmicky, but I enjoy it. It's still very fun to me. I mean, I tend to enjoy little toys and stuff like that, but part of this is the simplicity still gives that feeling that I think if you are a collector of anything, regardless if it's board games, action figures, trading cards, strange glass figures, you often are trying to, or you take great enjoyment in the reorganizing, collecting, cleaning, setting them up. And this is pretty much how it goes. You're thinking about the different patterns. And while there's going to be a lot more complexities depending on whatever your collection is, Here, you are thinking like, oh, all the blue things are going to look better together. Whatever the case may be, this is able to capture it in a much more simplified manner. Mechanically speaking, it does a fun job with set collecting. It has you do multiple things, I think, really well without making them too complex. Once again, one of the themes that's going on here. For example, you're going to have a personal goal, but basically you just need one of each type somewhere on your little, I was about to say somewhere on your board, but somewhere in your shelf. Now, in terms of the public ones, they are a race, which always adds that extra bit of tension of like, do I go for this or do I try to make sure I get those points first? That said, I also really like that it isn't a guarantee that whoever completes those, because I've had games when the same person has gotten the first top 2 highest scoring tiles, isn't a guarantee they've won. So it doesn't mean that player has such a huge lead that no one else can catch them. If you're able to get some of the lower scoring tiles, but you just happen to format your shelf much better in terms of grouping, you still have a very good chance at winning. It doesn't mean that they don't matter, but it means that you're still usually into the game to the very end, assuming that you're picking at a relatively similar pace as other players. In the end, I do feel like that even if you have some newer players at the table, it's much harder for them to end up with a much more emptier shelf versus someone a bit more skilled. And usually you'll have people reaching the end, and I think feeling like they had somewhat of a competitive score, or at the very least that there's a chance they could win. Now, there were 2 things I noticed that one of them I think is unavoidable and probably is going to be very true for much more advanced game groups. And the other one was a bit more just a weird coincidence. Obviously, the first thing I noticed, and this is going to be a big one for a lot of people, is how the people I played with in my game group who are used to plenty of heavier games felt like they got the idea and they knew what was going on really early on and sort of were like, all right, well, yeah, we'll play another one because you put it out, but it's not going to be one we're going to be excited to hit the table again and again. One of them even said they weren't sure if they'd even enjoy it as much if it wasn't for the fact that you had this vertical little toy gimmick. And yeah, that's probably true, but for me, that's enough. I mean, like I said, it does simulate that whole collecting and reorganizing thing that, at least for me, is very big. So to me, it was just fun. It wasn't just a silly gimmick. It was like, this is something I like doing. The other thing, though, that this one's more of just a weird experience, and I don't know if this would be something that goes across multiple tables or not. But even though the same people who said they get it, it's set collecting, what's this? There wasn't a game I played in where someone didn't utter the words, oh, I made a mistake. It almost always was with the personal goal. It wasn't something unique. It's just like some reason that they forgot about one tile that would go somewhere, or even like they needed these 2 tiles reversed, something like that. It's just they always seem to forget about one thing. And I know the same guy actually mentioned the thing before, wish that it was put at eye level so that when it maybe like that is because they're looking down some reason at a vertical board, they're not used to it, that they make mistakes like that. That's not that big of a deal, but it is the kind of thing, especially in a pattern recognition thing like this, that I can imagine some other players just being really annoyed if they felt like, oh, I can't believe literally should have swapped those 2 kind of deal. But for the most part, that's how it's treated. It's just, oh, it's a mistake. Because like I said, even if you don't finish your personal goal or if someone beats you to the public ones, as long as you group things really well, you'll still come up with a pretty good score. It's just those things may be the final things that help push you over. It really depends on how the others group as well. So it's definitely a fun light game, and it's one for anyone like me who has that mindset of wanting to clean and reorganize. It's never quite perfect, that you'll have a lot of fun with. But this isn't the kind of game where I feel like even though there are the public and private goals, that there's going to be a lot of complexity in changing a strategy. You're going to go for the tiles that you think fit best and try to just keep them all color organized. Crits and misses for My Shelfie. Crits. There are many different ways to score victory points, including both the public and private goals. The public ones in particular reward you doing unique patterns that you may not usually do, as well as having a speed element, as those who finish it first will get more points. However, that being said, even if you get that top scoring victory point, it doesn't mean you've guaranteed the win. So those who don't finish as fast as you still feel like they have a chance if they're able to play their tiles a little bit better than you do. I don't play enough games with vertical boards, and I really enjoy this one as it adds the set collecting and also organizing and deciding how you need this best to look. Granted, it's not best to look visually as much as what the cards tell you will give you the most points, but still, it's nice that the toy-like quality combined with the simple rules of just slotting in the tiles and trying to match the colors and patterns needed works to keep me engaged throughout the game. Misses. For those of you who will look for more complexity in the games, this might not be the greatest one for you. It does add a new element of the vertical shelf as a board, but really that feels a bit more gimmicky rather than something that is a new game mechanic. Mechanically speaking, you could just use a flat board to represent the shelf and just lay tiles down from the bottom up trying to match colors. That does remove the toy element of the vertical shelf, which is half the fun. For whatever reason, even though I just said how the game is a bit simpler for those who enjoy heavier games, it's very easy to get tunnel vision on one of the patterns or your personal goal, forgetting one over the other, and then at that last minute you put in a tile and realize it's too late. You can make mistakes in plenty of games, God knows I do, but this should have been something that's pretty obvious that literally you just need to double check your card again and to see if a certain color was needed in the space. One of those things is you just focus on one goal too hard. It's not the worst thing in the world, as it's very easy to rebound if you cannot get a specific goal done. But it is the kind of thing where it is sort of silly and almost a little annoying when every single game you hear someone say, I screwed up. So a light and fun-hearted game, but one that maybe is a bit too simplistic for those who actually have a board game shelf like this filled with games. That said, though, I do have shelves like this filled with games, and I really enjoyed this. But I think that's because this speaks to that collector mentality in me. I enjoy the games when you are collecting up different sets and colors and organizing them in a certain way. And this does all that with this really cute, fun little toy shelf that simulates the shelf pretty well. So I think it just sort of presses all those right buttons in my brain for me in not being one that's too hard to get. You can sit down, it's just, look, here is shelf, those are things, put them on shelf in patterns, get points. Works really well. All I have to focus on is making the pretty patterns. Now, you can let me know what your thoughts on this are. Is this one really fun? Do you enjoy it? Is it simulate for you how you set up your, well, I was going to say board game collection, but whatever your collection is? Definitely let me know whatever you collect down below. Or is this something that you feel like is a bit too basic and gimmicky for your tastes? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your collections in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching this review. Let me know your thoughts on this. And of course, the usual like, share, subscribe also help out greatly. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been a Roll for Crit review.